So happy to be here, especially talking about equality. But I think the most important thing that we need to start doing is to stop talking about equality, stop admiring the problems, because we all know that they exist, and start activating solutions for change and holding ourselves accountable for that change so that we can stop having these conversations about when is this going to happen. And according to the World Economic Forum, they predict it will take over 217 years to reach gender parity at the pace we're going. And this is around the world, not in any one particular country. So we have a lot of work to do. And with that, we have the best, in my opinion, conversation of the entire VivaTech, not to be competitive. But I'm just going to say for all of you that are here, you're very lucky because we have experts in the field that have been there, done that, and are truly walking the talk every single day. So with that, if you could each tell me who you are, what you do, and because I think most of the people here are under the age of 30, being at a tech conference, what's the best advice you would give to this quote-unquote next generation entering into the workforce today?
So hi, I'm Ann, and I am the Senior Vice President at SAP, where I'm running and building a global innovation community, including I'm also leading for UN Women the She Innovate program. So I'm actually represented here, representing the world's biggest enterprise community and the world's biggest women program with UN Women. And me and myself I've been in the tech industry for 18 years, and I think that the change starts with yourself, the perception about what you expect of other people. And I've been to many tech conferences, just like the one we have right here with VivaTech, and I have one big concern that I think we really, really need to reflect on, and that's where my advice comes to what we need to going to do forward. The question we need to ask ourselves, are we solving the gender gap from the past, the present, or the future? I don't know if you lately have been looking into if people who work with blockchain or machine learning with these pretty new technologies, are they mainly men-dominated fields or the women? And the sad story is that they're already man-dominated. And that's where I want to say, hold 1 second. Those technologies are new technologies. So what we need to start doing, we need to start super early and begin to have conversations at schools and universities where we get the next generation to step up and be part of working with all those new technologies. I just came in from New York yesterday evening where I was together with Gary Wee around VoiceCon. Voice is one of the big exponential technology areas. During the next 5 years, we will see that most applications in the world will have voice apps included. Why should women not step up here and become the people, the women, who go in and build those voice apps? So that's my advice. Step up and get engaged with all the new technologies.
Fantastic. Deemah, what about you?
Well, I'm Deemah AlYahya. Thank you for having me here today. I am the advisor and chief of Misk Innovation. Misk Foundation is an NGO, non-profit for His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. This foundation overlooks providing the empowerment and enable it for the youth, not only in Saudi but worldwide, to enable them to become thought leaders of the future. Also, I'm a member in the Saudi National Digitization Committee on a mission to digitize Saudi very soon. Also, I am an owner of an initiative called Women's Spark. This initiative empowers and enables women to use and utilize technology to create jobs of the future. the advice that I always tell youth and entrepreneurs that I see is there's never a bad idea. You have to try and try your best. Always be determined. Never take no for an answer, but never think that your idea is a bad idea. When it comes to women, with the advice that I always give women entrepreneurs is never change who you are, your values, and what you believe in. Be who you are, no matter what.
Fantastic. What about you, Peggy?
Thanks, Shelley. My name is Peggy Johnson. I run business development for Microsoft, so everything from our Azure cloud to Xbox and everything in between. I think my advice to young people, particularly those entering the tech world, is to be authentic. Just be yourself. Really a little bit of what Deemah said here. I was a female engineer. I still am a female engineer. And essentially, I was always told to be louder, to speak up more in meetings, to be really somebody that I wasn't. And I wasn't comfortable. And whenever I tried to do that, I wasn't terribly authentic. And I think we've reached a time now where everyone should just bring your best self to work, no matter if you are maybe more talkative and assertive or quiet like I am. I'm an introvert. So that's what I would change, because I spent a great deal of my career trying to be something that I wasn't, trying to be like what the other side of the table looked like.
What about you, Tony?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Tony Profit, and I'm the Chief Quality Officer of Salesforce. And the advice that I would offer is to be very thoughtful, be very deliberate about the values of the company that you are joining. And make sure that you understand the values of the company that you're joining, and that their values are aligned with your values. And there's nothing more disheartening at being involved in an organization or an endeavor where the values of the group are not aligned with your own values. And there's nothing more liberating and inspiring to be part of something where those values are aligned and you love the brand and you love what it stands for. You know, at Salesforce, we're super clear about what we stand for, and that's trust and customer innovation, customer success, and innovation and equality. So we have those 4 core values, and that's what we stand for, and we're unambiguous about that.
As I'm listening to each of you, I'm thinking about an Oscar Wilde quote, which is, "Be yourself, because everyone else is taken." And it's just so clear what we are saying is, own your strength. And if we were all the same, we wouldn't be necessary, which is just such an important thing to hold on to. So thank you for sharing your advice for what we say is the next generation. I actually think, and I think we all agree, it's the now generation. This is our future workforce today. So knowing that, and that, one of the topics was equality might be very hard to achieve and might take a long time. Why? What are solutions? And especially, Tony, I'll start with Salesforce because you are doing a lot, and you were the first company to come out with closing the wage gap and making a very intentional decision to do that. How do we close the gap faster, sooner, easier? Like, what do we do?
No, great point, Shelley. You highlighted, equal pay, and that's super, super important. It's foundational, and that's really one of the defining stories of Salesforce. And like all great stories, it has amazing heroes, but the heroes of the story, aren't who you think they might be. It's not Mark Benioff, the co-founder and CEO and chairman. The heroes of the story are actually Cindy Robbins, and she leads employee success for Salesforce, and Leila Seika, and she leads our App Exchange, so she's a top technology executive. And these courageous leaders came into Mark at a point in 2015 and said, we don't think that women are paid the same as men for the same work. And Mark was skeptical, but intent to really find out and get to the bottom of it, empowered these 2 leaders to get the facts, and we did in fact find a gap. And we've now on an annual cadence of auditing the pay of every employee on the planet for parity and equity based on gender, and have invested $8.7 million to make sure that we can say that there's equal pay for equal work. There's always more work to do ahead, but that's really a core story of the company with two amazing leaders that were courageous in bringing this issue to the forefront. So that's a great place to start for everyone.
And I also love how I remember hearing about the one-button push. With technology today, it's so much easier to see where the inequity is. You know, pushing the button to see the salaries and then making a conscious decision to close that gap.
Yeah, you know, data is power. And literally every company of whatever size, for-profit, nonprofit, government institution represented here in the room, that data is accessible to you. And you have the power to know, you know, is there a gap and is there an opportunity to create inclusion and parity and equity for pay? And so on each of these dimensions, you know, data is the fuel of management and data is power.
That's amazing. And so Peggy, you know, to you on how we close this gap, you have recently done a $26 billion deal with LinkedIn, and you're known as the chief Dealmaker. I mean, I don't know if you know that that's what's said about you, but that is what's said about you. That's pretty badass, I have to say. How are you working on elevating women inside of such a big, massive tech organization? And Tony talked about heroes. How do you create the sheroes and keep these women not just entry level coming into the pipeline, but rising to the top?
Well, some of it goes back to what I started out with, making sure that we have an opening in every meeting for every voice, and that can be a problem. I think you get a room full of people who are much more aggressive. It can be hard to hear all voices. So one of the things I've been doing, and I've asked my managers to do, is when you see that happening, I always say throw them the ball, to use an athletic a phrase, throw them the ball, because maybe they're having a hard time breaking into the conversation, but they do have something to say. It just might be an uncomfortable way for them to get in. So you as a manager can be the one to be the one to make the environment more inclusive for them. So we've been trying to do that all across the company.
That's great. I always say we also need an interruption bell. Like, how great would it be to put a bell in the middle of the table, and if you get interrupted, just click the bell until we get until we get there.
Right.
You know, it's not that hard to do. And I don't think you're an introvert. I actually think you're just selective about the conversations you have.
Well, I grew up in a family of, I have 14 brothers and sisters, and I was the second youngest. There was always a lot of people above me talking, so that's sort of my place in the world.
You've got a great place in the world. I think we all want to be in that place, so it's fantastic. And then Deemah, you know, from how we fill the pipeline, you are doing so much with youth and bringing young women into STEM. It is remarkable. You know, what's your philosophy on bringing women in, but also helping them stay in, and especially in every culture? But, you know, there's taboo topics where we think in, you know, Saudi Arabia, you know, women are not in tech, but obviously you're proving us all wrong.
Well, you know, I'm a geek in heart. So I started programming when I was an age of 12. Now, we have a very significant positioning in Saudi where 64% of our IT graduates are females. 72% of our science graduates are females. Also, we did an initiative December, it was with Microsoft, which is Saudi Codes, and we went to 113 cities and villages, and we got 300,000 individuals trained on coding. 76% were girls. So we do have that attraction when it comes to females to science and technology. The issue that we are facing in Saudi is the sustainability. So after they graduate, they do not continue in these sciences. And we think that these are for two main factors, which is one, the progression in their careers. So they get into a plateau. So they do not continue as individual contributors. They want to raise to more management roles and more executive roles, which in the technology sector in Saudi, it's very hard to get. And another thing is the culture itself and the complexity of science and technology and how it needs a lot of work, long hours, long time in labs and studios and so on. And that culture determines for females to be more relaxed in working in their homes, working very close to their families. So that's reasons why it shifted a lot of females from those careers. Now, what are we doing to start bringing them back and projecting them is first changing the culture. Because whatever trainings we give, whatever initiatives and opportunities we provide, it will not change till that culture is changed. So we are providing more opportunities for working from home, using platforms, technical platforms to start opening businesses. And we want to shift from let's say, job seekers to job creators, and where women can fill in that gap of unemployability. Connectivity is very important, and we are now accelerating our connectivity through Saudi, because when you get a female online, then you can get the biggest enterprise ever. What we really wish to see is more female-founded companies in NASDAQ and Bloomberg and in the Saudi Stock Exchange very soon. So with these fundamentals and also providing data for these females. Data is oil. And the more data you provide, the more that it can expand their imagination, and they can find solutions for great problems that we can't find solutions for. So these are what we're focusing on right now.
It's amazing. I mean, the biggest issue around the world is we start at about 50-50 in entry level and higher, obviously, in your part of the world, but we end at about 17 to 19%. At the top, and where we fall out is in middle management consistently, which we call the messy middle. So I want to get back to some solutions for how we keep women in the pipeline. So I'm going to come back to that, but I want to go to Ann now. You know, you're working on next gen everything, and as Deemah pointed out, you know, helping female founders, you know, start businesses and be successful in businesses. We are launching a program together, creating permanent girls' lounge spaces in college campuses in over 122 countries. So thank you for that. It's amazing. What do you find to be the greatest solution for getting women into the tech pipeline, but also keeping them there?
So I am very optimistic that we are going to be able to solve the gender gap. And it has to do with the logic about the time we are in right now. First of all, the 17 global goals, and I believe all the audience out there are fully aware of the 17 global goals, that when you do innovation with purpose. So that in itself have changed the conversation about when we do innovate, how do we innovate, what are the outputs. Secondly to that, what we also know today is that every single industry is becoming technology-driven. Every single job is become a technology-driven job or enabled job with technology. That means that it's not a conversation about the coders or the data science only. It's a conversation about that STEM education is something that every single woman, man should have today. And that's why, back to the girl lounges that we're setting up, we're actually setting up the first one in France. We're not going to say the name of the university. We'll do that at Cannes Lion here in a couple of weeks. So we're doing this together. But back to Shelley's point is that it really started early for women to engage with technology. And therefore, also what we heard the other panelists talk about, we need to bring it into schools, we need to bring it into universities. I have a global program with 3,500 universities around the world. Many of the universities here in France are part of the program where we educate women on STEM education. Because it is in the early age that you take your decision, and that's probably why I brought up when I was talking before that we need to understand what are we doing here. Are we solving the past issue about gender gap? Are we solving the present? Or are we solving the future? We really need to get going on the future big time. And my concern is around all the new exponential technologies that we already begin to see is Superman dominating. So therefore, what Shelley and I have talked many times, and now we're going to do it, we are going to go into schools in all over the world and make sure there are girl lounges in the innovation spaces. For 2 weeks ago, I had my 100 years anniversary. I opened up 100 next-gen spaces in 14 months, and they are going to be the platform, and many more is going up to be open. Innovation with purpose with girls. So that is what the mission is. We're going to solve this into the future, otherwise we're never going to solve it, and we are going to solve it.
Fantastic. So let me just go really quickly around, and if you could say one rule that you would like to break about the corporate world today that are preventing women from rising up, or a new rule that you would like to put in place. Deemah suggested being able to have more flexible schedules, working from home, that will help us get past this messy middle. What one thing on your mind pops up that could be very helpful for helping women go from entry to leadership, passing that messy middle period where we have more caregiving responsibility, or where discrimination might kick in with quote-unquote unconscious bias? Or do you have anything that you're thinking about that could be a solution?
I would say the number one thing is the data, because we talked about it with equal pay. Well-intentioned people, when they see the data and they see the gap, they're compelled to act. The data, being transparent and being accountable. So at Salesforce, we are doing that, and we're sharing our data. And so this year, we have 30.9% women at Salesforce. Wow. And a year prior, it was 30.1%. So company-wide, worldwide, the women representation grew by 0.8%. But because we're growing at scale, that means 2,000 more women work for Salesforce in that year. So data, transparency, accountability, we're not sharing those data because we think we're done or we think that it's anywhere close to perfect, but we're doing it to be held accountable by all our stakeholders. I want to add a second measure of accountability. The accountability doesn't stop there. Every executive who works for our CEO, Mark Benioff, who has more than 500 people, every month gets a scorecard. What's on the scorecard? How many women work for you? How many women worked for you last month? How many women worked for you a year ago this month? How many women did you hire? How many women did you promote? How many women left the company that worked for you for whatever reason? And we don't just want to make the entire cohort look like society. We certainly want to do that. We want to make sure that the leadership looks like society, because that builds great culture. And so every executive that has more than 500 people gets another scorecard. How many women executives do you have? Same litany. How many women executives worked for you a year ago, this month, and last month? How many did you hire? How many did you promote? How many left the company? I think that's the number one thing. Data drives management decisions. Getting people the data, well-intentioned leaders, clearly the imperative is there, will make the right decisions if they are empowered with the data. With low latency, we do this on a monthly cadence.
I think what you're identifying is the data, and then it's the conscious mindset of being better, using that data to make a difference, which might sound so obvious, but sometimes it's not. And I think that 30% is the flipping point. Yes, 50-50 is what we hope to achieve, but we need to tip the balance before we can equalize it. So kudos to you. Peggy, what do you think?
So I think one thing that can accelerate the whole process is we tend to think of diversity right now as a responsibility, and I think if we can change the discussion to an opportunity, it may accelerate it. And the point being, when we are building products, for instance, you want to build the products where most people will buy them. So if we have teams of people that only look like one type, it'll resonate well with that person, that type of person, but maybe not with everybody. And so when we are building new design teams, for instance, at Microsoft, we want to ensure that we have very diverse teams so that we're taking everybody's opinion and likes into account so it'll resonate with the broadest community. That's a bottom line thing. And if we can turn it from sort of this responsibility, I've got to hit my number thing, to an opportunity, well, there could be a business impact here. There's a P&L impact here, a bottom line impact, and I think that can help accelerate it.
listen, we always say that diversity is not about gender, race, or age. It's truly about business. I mean, it's not just a social imperative, it's a business imperative. Diversity is good for business, and it's a diversity of mindset, which is what makes business successful. Let's go to diversity. We have just a few minutes left. Has there ever been a moment in your life that you did feel uncomfortable? This is a diverse panel, right here. Let's talk about diversity, because we always say sometimes you've got to get uncomfortable. We've all been uncomfortable, I think, in our careers. Was there a moment you've been uncomfortable?
Well, I could write books. Yes, of course. I've been introduced to the workforce as a software engineer in a culture that did not have female software engineers. It's not just a minority, there wasn't any. So of course I have witnessed a lot of stories. One of them is that when they hear a woman's voice, they hang up the phone. They wouldn't collaborate. They wouldn't. We were segregated in different rooms. I had a team that didn't want to share information. I had to figure out myself. So yes, I went through a lot of bumpy rides, and I can say a lot. But the thing that I learned, and I succeeded, I felt that I succeeded, and I am where I am right now. Leading in the government and leading in private sector, that again, going back to never forget who you are. I chose not to go aggressively. I chose not to, I don't like the word fight for it. Actually, what I mastered is gaining the trust. And whenever my parties or my male colleagues felt that I was the key to their success, and when they felt that and knew that, then the doors opened. So I still today have a lot of uncomfortable situations. So another one is when I was appointed by the government, and I was very fortunate for that, to lead digital transformation for Saudi Arabia. And when I was appointed, what was the feedback is, oh yeah, because she's a woman. So she was appointed because she's a woman, and not because of my capabilities, although it was because of my credentials and not because I'm a female. So that added a lot of pressure to really perform, to deliver. So the first initiative that I launched, and they saw that I was capable, that was a relief. So.
That's amazing. And, you know, I think even in this conversation, you know, Tony, as the guy, you're the minority here up on the stage. It's nice to see 4-to-1 ratio here. Have you ever been in a situation that you felt uncomfortable and then created the whole, you know, getting comfortable being uncomfortable and creating the new norm?
Yeah, because I think this applies for so many aspects of people's identity. It can be about your gender identity, it can be about your sexual orientation, it can be about your race, your ethnicity, your religion, it can be about all of those things. To your question, absolutely. You know, when I started work kind of in the 80s, at one point I had a job where I would call people on the phone as part of a research program, worked at a consulting firm, and I'd show up in person. So I talk to them on the phone, I show up in person, and they come down the lobby and meet me, and you can see it in their eyes. They're like going, well, where is he? Right? And go, it's me, it's the black person over here, and you could see it. You know, they're saying, well, you're black, right? And sometimes they would actually say that out loud. I said, you just said that out loud, right? But then the magic would happen. And you would see that someone who initially, it might have been the first black person they ever worked with in their business experience. And just in the weeks or months as you continue to work with them, just showing them that you are competent and reliable and high integrity, and all of a sudden you saw the sense of empathy building. And that's why I'm a big believer in human nature, and that if you can just create empathy with someone and have a sense of shared experience with them, you can change that person. You can change that person.
That's amazing. Anyways, we have to wrap. I'm so sad to say this. I just want to share one quick story, which is just so in line with that. When I was, I think, 30 years old, now I'm an old lady, but I brought in this big client, and I was told that it was impossible. I get this meeting. I set the whole team up to go, and I was then told that Paul was going to go, and Peter was going to go, and John was going to go, but Shelley wasn't going to go because it was a man's world. And I said, fine, then I'm going to cancel the meeting, and you guys schedule it yourselves and see how that works for you. So own your voice, find your strength, be yourself, and thank you for leading the way for each and every one of us.